Hello and welcome to this webinar, How to Future-Proof Your Career. I don't know about you, but I am super excited to hear from an amazing panel today. Starting with Sam WADHWANI. Sam is the Chief Technical Architect at PwC. He is a Salesforce CTA and also a Salesforce MVP. He's joined by Tony KIRUMBA, Senior Software Engineer at Boston Beer. He's a Salesforce consultant and another Salesforce MVP. And last but certainly not least, we've got Ian GOTTS. He is the founder of CEO of Elements.cloud, and he's got decades of years of championing business analysts in change in Salesforce. He's also written 10 books. So Ian, I'd like to pass over to you to get started.
Thank you, Christine. And also thank you for the panel for joining us. This is such an important topic. I think Salesforce is changing. I know I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem 20 years, and it feels like every year we're changing faster and faster. And I think it's, for a lot of people, it's quite difficult to understand how to chart a career, their dream, not just dream job, but dream career. And that's why I thought putting the panel together with such experience would be fantastic. So just to set the scene, I mean, Salesforce is now obviously a very powerful platform. It's becoming a lot broader, being used in wider and more use cases. It's becoming a lot more strategic in organizations, and therefore is becoming a lot more complex. You add into the mix, say, from TDX last year, Data Cloud, and then obviously at Dreamforce this year, Agentforce was launched. So suddenly we've got the platform, Data Cloud is a way of connecting data, the Customer 360 picture is still there, but then we've got Agentforce sitting on top. So clearly we're now building a very, very capable platform. And actually, if you look at it, there's a lot to it. And no longer can you be the accidental admin or the solo admin dealing with all of this. So I think it's even more important to start to chart your career. So a lot of the discussion I want to have with Tony and Sam, but also with anyone who wants to ask questions, is working out how do we actually decide what career path is right for us, and what are the steps we need to go through there. So let's start, Tony, with you. You were at Dreamforce, and obviously you saw the launch of Agentforce. I know it's very new, and I think you're still obviously digesting some of it. But what do you think the implications are on the ecosystem, and also maybe the Salesforce trajectory?
Thanks, Ian. Great question. So yes, was at Dreamforce and got to see the launch of Dreamforce. And like a lot of other people, tapped my nose and said, wait, isn't this Einstein Copilot revamped, rebranded? Which it is and it isn't. It's clearly an evolution of that trajectory. And so it is somewhat new, but it's more of the same, more of what we've been seeing from Salesforce over the past year or so. And so from a personal perspective, from a career mapping perspective, really, I was going to say this later. When I went to Dreamforce, one of my major priorities was not to hang out with my fellow developers, but to hang out with business analysts. Because what I'm seeing in the ecosystem, what I'm seeing in the market right now, is there's a proliferation of advanced, highly capable tools that Salesforce, for example, is going to try and make as accessible as possible, going to try and make as popular as possible for the widest suite of customers. And so the big lingering question for me is, who is leaning into business value? Who is going to translate these incredible, sophisticated, capable, complex tools into something that organizations will pay for because it drives value? And so that's the conversation that I think is really, really relevant for us as practitioners to have, because the tools are coming. Salesforce is not slowing down. The question that we need to be able to answer confidently is, can we turn this into a value driver for an organization? And how do you map that? How do you align your career along those lines?
It's interesting. I was in a couple of the go-to-market sessions, and it was all about business outcomes. It was talking about, okay, not just installing technology, but what are the business outcomes? But also think if we think about the drivers now, both Data Cloud and Agentforce will be consumption-based pricing. So if customers are successful, revenue flows to Salesforce. So they need to focus on effective use of those applications. And that falls on all of us, both ISVs as we are, but also you, Tony, as a customer, but also Sam, you for representing the SI community in terms of we all have a part to play in getting this to be delivered. So Sam, you're a CTA, which is sort of the highest level of certification. I think there are fewer than 500 in the world. So talk to me about what your journey for CTA is, because to make that decision to become a CTA is not a small decision. So talk to me about that, your journey, so at least we can understand whether that's a journey we all want to go on.
Yeah, and it definitely resonates. You're absolutely right. New technologies like data cloud and indeed Agentforce mean that we can be sure about one thing, and that is that change is a constant. We're constantly going to be developing, or Salesforce are at least constantly developing new technologies. And I think organizations are also having to change as well. They've got changing customer expectations, like you say, the value drivers. And the customer expectations are also, demanding because of the customers increasing awareness of the fact that organizations have data about them, tech's more capable, and their experience matters. But what it means is that there's a demand for the workforce to also be more skilled, or at least skilled on current technologies, right? So when it comes to CTA, if I can, I'll roll back to 2015. This is, it is a long story, but I'll try and keep it brief. So I started my Salesforce career in 2010. So I was 5 years in 2015 after a 6-year stint as a Siebel CRM consultant, where I'd progressed from a developer to an architect at that time. So gone through quite an evolution. Now, in those 5 years that I started my career in Salesforce, I'd effectively started again learning a new technology, but had carried a lot of the skills and behaviors through from Siebel. So quickly, got up to speed on how the platform worked, and in a way had to be at peace with the fact that I couldn't access or touch the database, at all. And that was the age of classic. Now, one of those behaviors was definitely a curiosity to understand deeply what the platform could do, and that applies today, whether it was, even at that time, handling or assimilating large volumes of data, being able to automate processes, integrate with other systems, or produce insights to help businesses grow. Now, a lot of those are familiar even today, right? What started as a few questions gave me knowledge, and that grew and grew, allowing me to take on bigger and more complex projects at the time. So in 5 years, I was working for a boutique company, and a lot of folks who were familiar with the credential kept asking me why I wasn't a CTA, because at least in their eyes, I had the broad and deep knowledge that was needed. Quite frankly, I got tired of being asked all the time. So I looked into it and independently in my company prepared whilst having a young family at the time, and took the exam and failed. Well, that hurt quite a bit. I'll say that, because I felt like I had the knowledge, right? But about 6 months later, driven by a free retake, decided to go again and failed again. Now, it's easy to look back and sort of reflect on it, but it wasn't the knowledge that I needed to develop at the time. And I think this is important today. It was the skills needed to consider all the dimensions and complexities of an entire organization's transformation, and under significant constraints as well, whether it be the time taken to do it, the scale with which you need to do it, ambiguity which we have today, and uncertainty. But it was also the skills that come with that, the ability to assimilate knowledge and communicate concisely and justify decisions, and most of all, for people in their careers today, understanding myself better, so I could operate at the most optimal level. Fast forward to 2019, and having developed and practiced those skills on larger and larger implementations, I decided to go again. And through a number of things, including coaching, collaborating with other CTA candidates and people in the community, asking a huge amount of questions, and realizing my flaws quite brutally, I took it again in 2020 and demonstrated those skills successfully. Now, I wouldn't say that the journey is for everyone, and it's certainly not a destination. What's most important is the skills and behaviors that I gained along the way. As you can tell from the story, whether it's from the Siebel days or the CTA days, those skills, those behaviors, and those characteristics have stayed with me and are exercised daily. I know plenty of CTAs who have then gone on to have different focuses and motivations, some more technical, some more business focused. So it's definitely not a one size fits all. But I think what I'd like people to take away is the fact that you need to concentrate on the skills, those behaviors, because those will endure, regardless of what the technology is, and how change comes about.
So that one of the things I think you said there was, it's not the only career path. And I think something Tony, you and I were talking about earlier, which is there are different paths now. No longer is there, I mean, I did my trailhead, I did a few certs, I'm an admin and go there. But we've got very different sets of skills. I think you did a presentation at Dreaming in Colour where you talked about the different career paths. And because maybe it's helpful if you start to explain your thinking there.
Yeah. So that conversation, that session was born out of a conversation between me and my good buddy Warren Walters about, we've both had a couple of career transitions, primarily between different kinds of Salesforce organizations. So going from a consultant to me working at a customer and him working at an ISV, and then evolved our careers in different directions. He has taken on more of a independent consulting arm and starting to build a practice and build an organization there, whereas I am trying to embed myself deeply within an organization and be a technical leader inside of an organization that frankly doesn't really care about the name Salesforce, but cares about the outcome that the piece of technology drives. And so the session was broadening the landscape of all of the different kinds of things that you could do with your skill set. So when Sam talks about a CTAs who lean more technical, CTAs who lean more business focused, a CTA as a label on a particular profile or a particular set of skills, then the question after that is, where can I apply these skills? And how do I identify the skills that I need in order to move from one space, from one kind of organization to another? And so it was things like, one of the key learnings for me going from working at a consulting firm to working at a customer was exactly that. The name Salesforce doesn't matter. My organization, Boston Beer Company, sells beer. And whatever technology helps us sell beer best is the one that we are going to lean into. And whatever capabilities help us sell beer best are the ones that we're going to lean into. And so stepping back from the quote unquote name brandness of Salesforce and more considering, how does this set of capabilities, how does this kind of software fit into a given organization at a given stage in its growth? What are the drivers? Who do you need to be interacting with? How do you position yourself? And then say, for example, I wanted to go from where I am now to an ISP. Well, now I need to lean really heavily into my software engineering skill set, because Salesforce now becomes a platform upon which I'm building public-facing software, and that's a whole other way of approaching the same core skill set.
I always remember when I worked my time in Accenture, we used to talk about finding your ambulance in traffic. Okay, so find the partner who's going somewhere and talking about. But the first job was actually trying to find, okay, who do you want to be like? Do you want to be like this person who's very technical, actually doesn't run a team, but actually has deep technical expertise, is the greybeard that everyone goes to? Do you want to be like this, who's the person who's running big teams? Do you want to be here, who's being the business analysis? So I think the starting point is working out, try and pick some people and go, I'd like to try and be like them, and spend some time and understand, is that actually, find out what their life is like and whether you really want to be like that, rather than going, they've got the title X, so therefore I must go after that title, because titles sometimes don't actually suggest what they really do. So are you going down the business analysis route? Are you going down the architect route? Are you going around the product management route? So there are different paths here, and I think it's trying to pick those. And then there's a different flavor. Is it inside a consulting firm? Is it inside an organization? Inside an ISV, which has a very different feel to it. And I don't think they're as interchangeable as they were maybe 10 years ago. People went, oh, I can flip between them. I think once you've set a path, you need to keep going.
Ian, I think you touched on something really important about how the role can obscure the day-to-day work, the capability, the skill set, the lifestyle, the type of organization. Because you think of the four canonical Salesforce roles: admin, developer, consultant, architect. And within those, there's so much latitude. There's so many different kinds of things that people do. There's so many different kinds of things that people are good at. One of the things that I absolutely love about working in this ecosystem is that those are all real people. So if I consider myself a Salesforce admin and I see other people with Salesforce admin who seem very different from me, then it's not too difficult to find them and have a conversation and get to know them a little bit and get to know their worlds a little bit deeper. The ecosystem, as large as it is still small enough that you can go one step beyond the role and get to know a person and get to know their career track and see if it's a good role model for you.
You need to add BA to that. I'm sorry, there is.
Absolutely.
And I think actually there's a lot of energy, being myself included, trying to get business analysis as an important role type. And there's a cert, but at Dreamforce, it wasn't even a role type on one of the check boxes. I mean, it's like, so I think we've still got quite a long way to go in terms of Salesforce. There's a level of maturity there. But what's coming out is you could take the view, which is like, well, life will take me wherever I go, and if I get an opportunity, then I'll take it. But some people actually want to manage a career, and Sam, you and I talked about this idea of a conscious direction, about how, because you decided on being a CTA, and it was like a multi-year activity. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, and I've I've done a couple of community talks and internally within the company as well. What you were saying about flavors rang a bell, because we likened architects in various sub roles, as you mentioned there, Tony, as different flavors of crisp. You know, so you can have, there's a whole spectrum of flavors that you can have and combinations, and actually in your role you ought to look for or at least identify what your shape of of role you want to fit into, and that might be a blend of different characteristics. Now, I coach quite a few CTA candidates, as you might imagine, and I mentor quite a few Salesforce professionals to develop their architect careers specifically, because that's my domain. But through the CTA coaching, an important question comes up regularly to really understand whether someone's ready to embark on their version of that arduous journey. And it's important. It's the importance of understanding your why. You may have heard that before. The article that I wrote is really an application of the same principle, but applied equally to milestones and points in your career. So I wrote it having had an encounter with a very close friend of mine. It honestly surprised me how they, in particular, a very proficient, in control, and seemingly driven person, could come to a point where they changed their life so drastically, impacting many others around them, least of all them, if that makes sense. Subsequent to that, I've encountered countless conversations with others where they describe their concerns and circumstances of their current position or role. And I feel sort of a question bubbling up that I struggle to prevent coming out. And that question is simply, what are you doing? What are you doing? Just try and answer that question. It seems like an innocuous question on the face of it, but when you consider it, it poses the challenge of really thinking about why. Like, why are you there? Why are you considering moving? The answers to those questions can reveal a lot more than the simple ambition of, well, I want to get this cert, or I want to become this kind of architect. Why is the real insight into it. So the article highlights the importance of not just doing things for the sake of it, For example, certifications. AI specialist has just come out. Data cloud consultants come out recently. There's the full gamut of of certifications that are out there, whether it be AWS or Azure or whatever it is. And they're all relevant to new innovations and technologies. I think, of course, you want to learn, you want to develop, and you want to show that knowledge. But it's the skills where the real practitioner's ability is cited. Stephen Bartlett is one of the people who I sort of follow and listen, to his podcast and things like that. And he says, you don't grow in your comfort zone, right? So it's not just having the knowledge, it's about applying it. And if you haven't applied it and sort of pushed it to that degree, then why are you doing it? you know? So as you go through your career, that principle of conscious direction is asking yourself, why are you doing it? What is it for? What's the purpose of doing that? What is it? What are you expecting it to give you? Um, and why does it set you on that path that takes you to the shape of role or position that you're aiming for?
You also need to include your own personal circumstances. I remember my time at Accenture I was quite interested in strategy, but I realized every strategy project was a 6-week project with a big sales bit at the beginning, everyone working every hour that existed, and then it was 6 weeks on a project onto the next thing. And actually, that didn't fit with what I wanted. I ended up actually going the other way and going, I want to be on big projects for long periods of time. I want to run. I needed the stability so I could actually pursue my sailing career in terms of racing sailboats and doing other things. So life is more than work. So I ended up running big projects. I mean, I had 2.5 years. I had a team of 500 people on the project team. So we had stability there. So it's not just what you want to do for a career, but actually you've only got a certain number of hours on the planet. What do you want to do with that as well? Mine was very selfish in terms of what I wanted to do, but actually contributing to others, working with family. So I think there are lots of different factors that you need to put into that. But this idea of finding someone and you go, actually, I'd like to be like you. How did you get there? And I think the beautiful thing about this ecosystem is you can approach anybody and ask them. It's such a giving type of culture that anybody will grab time in my calendar, let's sit down for coffee virtually, and then talk to me about what life is like. Show me a calendar and show me the things that you do, and work out if that's what you want to go and do. And then how do you find mentors who are the stepping stones to there? So they may not be your mentor if they're 10 years ahead of you. You need to find a mentor who's probably a year or two ahead of you. So
Yeah.
Sam, mentoring, that's something I know that you do a lot. How do you get the best out of how do you make that mentor relationship work?
Well, it's based on trust, first of all, and I think the key that you said there that I thought was really interesting and actually something that is prevalent today more than it has ever been is that community. It's if you're looking for people to inspire you, we have such a vibrant and in some ways noisy number of channels through social media, but there's therefore lots of sort of opportunity. It can be a bit of a fire hose, but there's lots of opportunity for you to notice people who are inspirational or intrigue you in terms of the shape of role that they occupy and they embody, and also offers that opportunity to sort of reach out and have that conversation. But it's based on connections, right? So whether it be connecting with someone new who's in the ecosystem, or whether it be in a mentor-mentee relationship, you have to have a connection with someone in order to really understand how that role fits, what their lifestyle's like, what the characteristics of the role are, to decide whether you want to is something that's interesting to you to move on your career. And the mentor-mentee relationship is a connection that's mutual, right? So it is not effective unless there is that mutual understanding. One in terms of what your your direction may be, or maybe forming to be, because it's we don't always know at the very outset what we want to do, and it changes as we go. Versus the mentor, which is that as a mentor, I can help you, but I'm there's that mutual understanding of I can't do this for you. This is about us working together to develop in your role professionally, or whatever that goal might be. So it's based on connections, and it's based on trust.
I have some tips and tricks for forming that mentor relationship. So this is advice that my dad gave me ages and ages ago about finding every excuse possible to go up and shake hands and say hello. So my ulterior motive, for one of my ulterior motives, I have many ulterior motives. One of my ulterior motives for running the developer group in Boston is because it is the best excuse to go up to anyone and everyone and say hello. And when I walk into our end of year party, my job is to go up and say hello and make people feel welcome and say, "Oh, hey, we met at the we met 3 months ago when you last came to a user group meeting and you told me A, B, C, and D. How are things going? Has anything changed since then?" And you just find lots of excuses to go up and say hello and to form those connections. And you don't need to lead. You don't need to be leading a community group to do that. I'm sure if you've been to a few of those meetings, there are people who you've seen regularly, and people who have taken a genuine interest in you, and people that you will go up and say hello to because they're the familiar face in the crowd. So making yourself a familiar face in the crowd is absolutely vital. It's absolute gold. The other way that I've seen that manifest is volunteering at your local Dreamin' conference. So I'm a huge proponent of that. Go stand at the registration desk of your local Dreamin' conference and see if you don't make 100 new connections. And you'll know who they are, where they're from, and what they do. And you'll have a great excuse to go up to them and say hello afterward. So it really is just about finding an excuse to go up and say hello and taking it from there. And there's opportunities floating around everywhere.
It feels like technology is moving on even quicker and quicker. And we got a couple of problems here happening, and I'm looking at some of the chat and the discussion. One is the product's getting bigger and bigger, and I mean, I'm as bad as anybody else. Like squirrels. Oh, I could do that. Oh, I could. Oh, can I play? And I think it's almost saying no now and going, okay, well, I could learn this. I could learn that. I could learn this. What are the things which we all have to do as a minimum? Clearly, I think about 3 core skills: presenting, writing, and networking. Forget that. But when I start thinking about some of the more technical skills, does everyone have to understand AI? Does everyone have to get the AI cert? Let's start there.
So I think there's some foundational knowledge that as technology changes, you would be doing yourself a disservice in your in your role if you didn't sort of look to gain. But it's founded on you talk about writing. Say those again. Right, writing, presenting,
networking.
Networking.
The last thing that Tony talked about, networking.
So the one that I will add to that is asking questions and being curious. Absolutely, that is the one of the core skills. It's why is everybody talking about AI? Why is it so important? Those are the questions you ought to ask of yourself, and that will lead you to a foundational knowledge in why is it important? How is it going to impact my life? How is it going to impact my customers' lives? How does Salesforce do it, for example? And from there you can then easily take AI associate, for example. AI specialist is a little bit a few more questions, and the same thing is true for data cloud. How does this actually work? In ingesting data, in harmonizing that data, and then so what is another question that I really like asking. So I definitely think asking questions is the other skill to gain that knowledge.
And I think this applies more, but not exclusively, to technically oriented folks, developers, or understanding software structure, understanding software engineering as a practice, agnostic of the particular implementation of the particular technology. So when the books that the books that I'm most oriented towards these days are things like domain-driven design, things like just enough software architecture, because, and this is the bet that I'm making. I don't know that this is the bet that I'm making. It's the way that I believe things are going to go, is especially for people who are managing complex systems, it's going to be more important to understand the structure, to be able to zoom out and abstract and understand the pieces and how they connect together rather than the specifics. So data cloud, what is data cloud as an engineering system, as a software engineering system? How does that software engineering system connect to the business application stack that is Salesforce, connect to the wider application stack that is your enterprise, etc.? And if you understand the patterns, then you can abstract away from the name of the day, from the flavor of the day.
I think that's a key theme, actually, when we talk about the trajectory of Salesforce. It's now, I said, more strategic, more complex. You need core engineering and implementation skills to be able to deliver some of this stuff. I mean, if you're standing up like Sales Cloud and you're adding a few flows, maybe you can get away with it. But I mean, we've implemented Data Cloud internally, and we got massive benefits out of it. But you need to architect it. 90% of the activity for implementing Data Cloud is planning and design, business analysis, data analysis, architecture, security, then thinking about what data you're going to move around, and all of that, documenting it, then understanding what the user stories are for the work to be done. Implementing it was 10%. Once you've got there, the Data Cloud sort of going, now I can push the buttons to do things. So I think there's a real pressure now it's a lot more about understanding how big systems work. And if you're technical as you are, then it's understanding how they're all architected. If you're going down a more management route, it's the business analysis, it's asking the questions, it's thinking more like a product manager. And I think that's a big shift we're seeing. We're not going to see a solo data cloud admin. It's a team sport. Okay, the hardest job in the ecosystem is solo admin. You can't be expected to do all these things now. And I think that idea of it, you need to pick a skill that you need, whether it's the BA skill, a technical skill, an admin skill. You almost need to start thinking about how you narrow down your skill set and in terms of the technical, narrow it down to industry, narrow it down to product, narrow it down to discipline, rather than going, I can do everything, because you just, Salesforce is making life too hard for all of us in those terms, because it's going in too many different directions. So how have you thought about this, the two of you, because you've both got really successful careers, but you must have had to try and navigate the turning things down rather than signing up for things. So Tony, you first.
Exactly right. So Salesforce is making it too hard for us. And especially now in my current role. So if I chart out my future, if I chart out my future, it looks like enterprise architect, it looks like engineering manager, it looks like application developer in a stack that is Salesforce plus. It is Salesforce, and then it's having a hand in being responsible for related technologies that all together produce the value proposition that we're trying to achieve. So what that has led to for me is exactly what I described, having to abstract away a little bit and understand the software engineering practice. A big part of that is communicating. So a lot of the people that a lot of the time when I'm in conversations now, I am the Salesforce subject matter expert, and Salesforce is a black box with Tony's name on it, and he's going to deal with whatever's inside there. And I need to be the interface between Salesforce and the organization, between Salesforce and other engineering teams, between Salesforce and other business units. And so learning to communicate in that form. And one of the other bets that I'm making is cross-skilling. So broadening my tech stack to include, because Boston Beer is a Microsoft shop, the Microsoft stack, learning how to build applications in .NET, learning how to build applications on Azure Cloud, because even if I keep building applications in Salesforce, those are the interfaces that I'm going to need to connect to. So for me, it's really been a question of, if I fast forward 5, 10 years, what kind of space do I expect to be playing in? And what is the core skill set of that space? It is being able to communicate in common terms across multiple engineering domains and communicate in common terms about Salesforce as a system that is part of an enterprise architecture. So what skill set do I need to do that? And the trade-off is I'm not going to be as good at what's inside the box. I'm not going to be the expert on Data Cloud. I'm not going to be the expert on where the platform is in 5 years. I'm going to need to lean on other people for that piece. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more actually. And it's it's a recurring question that comes up for CTAs, in fact, through the journey, because just in case you weren't aware, the actual exam itself can be any scenario that you could dream of, right? So you don't know what you're going to get, and you only get it on the day and find out. So how do you prepare for that, right? In the same way as you could walk into a customer's organization tomorrow, and they could ask you any question under the sun, like about the technology that they've got. How do you prepare for that? And the approach I take is similar to yourself actually, through the CTA journey and in day-to-day life. Is I have my experience, and I know I've gained a certain amount of knowledge from having practical, hands-on, experience, borne the battle scars, of those domains, whether it be integration or sales and service cloud, experience cloud, marketing cloud, commerce cloud, whatever it is, Salesforce CPQ and so on. But that doesn't mean I can know everything, right? I can't. But in the same way as I think it was lean, lean processing, lean manufacturing. There's a concept of just in time. Use of materials or whatever. You can apply the same thing to knowledge. I need that information at that time,
expertise.
just in time. Yeah, just enough to understand the fundamentals of the thing that I'm integrating in with. Or if you take a step back and you look at the overall ecosystem now, well, we've got AWS in the mix quite prominently. We've got Hyperforce, built on top of that. You still got Heroku, in the wings. And now you've got Data Cloud on the Hyperforce platform and a bunch of other stuff. Of course, we therefore need a base understanding of that stuff. We're not going to be experts in it, but you need a base understanding to do your job and to do your job well. And it's not just confined to, I guess this is where the challenge is, not just confined to the sales arena anymore. It might be App Exchange partners that help very specific use cases that supplement and augment the capability as skills in Agentforce or something like that. You've got to know that stuff, at least at a basic understanding level. So it's a case of, as I said, identifying, as you're sort of practicing your role, what are the things you need to know a little bit more about? And then at the time of needing to know it, asking the questions to gain the knowledge. What you'll find over time is that you've gained quite a lot of knowledge about the overall ecosystem. And for those areas where you need deep understanding of it, build the connections again to find. So it's not my biology teacher when I was in secondary school said, don't ever say I don't know. That's not a principle. It's okay to say I don't know, right? But what he always taught us was, don't say I don't know. Instead, respond with, that is yet a question I need to find the answer to. So it's not a case of knowing everything. It's about knowing how to get the answer, and that might be, connecting with somebody who's a specialist, asking the questions again of them so that you understand from their experience the fundamentals or the deep technical knowledge, or bring them into the conversation, and you can learn a huge amount. So yeah, very similar.
So, I mean, there are a number of questions coming to the chat, and it's quite interesting. There's the I've got all these technical skills. How do I present that? Oh, there's also, I'm a BA, but I don't have any technical skills. So does that mean I haven't got a career? If I try and distill some of the things that the two of you've talked about, which is everybody's got a set of Salesforce related skills. They may be BA skills. They've got some core Salesforce skills. They may have more depth in terms of technical skills in one area, but that's only just one dimension. The other dimension is the soft skills. So the ability to communicate, ask questions, network, write. But there's another dimension, which is also industry. And I think I interview a lot of people who go, I don't have any career, I don't have anything relevant to Salesforce. Like, well, what did you do? Oh, well, I used to work in the retail industry. Okay, well, that's relevant. Now, I always talk about when people try and change jobs, you can only move one of those three dimensions. You can't go, I'm going to change from being very business oriented to technical oriented. I'm going to go from retail to banking. I'm also going okay, lean on the things you've already got. But when you're presenting to whether interviewing or presenting to new people, you need to lean on those business skills. Okay, Salesforce is becoming a lot more industry focused. You're going to start to see that again. It's another specialization. I was very clear in my Accenture career. I want to be in banking. Why? Because they were in London. I was in aerospace and defense, and you don't make rockets and bombs in central London. I was always out of town. But after 2 years into my career, I didn't know the banking industry, and there was no way I was ever going to get into that. So you need to work out what industry you're in, and so stay in that industry and lean on that, because that's another asset. And then you can move to adjacent industries if you're starting to lean on other skills. So I think think of your career as a series of stepping stones where you've got 2 feet on one, and okay, now where do I put my hand? Maybe it's twister. So I've got 2 feet on that. I can move one hand. Okay, now I can move the other hand. Right, now I can move the leg across. So it's you work your way in terms of building that industry up. But I think what I'm seeing is the industry focus, the focus on outcomes, the focus on better implementation skills, business analysis means you need to lean on that industry knowledge as much as anything else, and present and come from that end, and then build it out with those technical skills.
No, absolutely relevant, and this is something that this is something that I hear time and time again, especially from people in the community groups who are making a career transition or looking for their next step and trying to find what levers do I have available to open up that next door. And the piece that I wanted to add is if you've been a professional in a given industry, say it's healthcare, say it's fintech, say it's banking, say it's consumer goods, then a core skill that a core competency, a core capability that you can bring to the table is translating your business domain into a technology domain. So if you work in healthcare, for example, you know you say you know what it is to work a hospital floor or to administer a hospital system. Can you translate that into a technical domain and build trust, build confidence that you can be trusted to implement technology for that domain, right? Because we all work in the technology space, technology, we all work in the tech industry. And even as a BA, can you translate the work of running a hospital floor into processes, platforms, entities, data, and talk about it like an engineered system? Because ultimately what you're going to do is help develop and identify requirements for and shepherd the building of a technology system for that domain. So know your domain for sure, that's one piece, and then showcase your capability by translating your business domain into technical terms. Talk to me about the entities that make up a healthcare system. How do those entities relate? All technology is just data structures and algorithms. Can you use your deep knowledge of this domain to parse out the data and algorithms that make up that domain and then build technology along it? Done. Boom. That's it. That's all you need. You will have a long and healthy career building technology for whatever space that is.
But if we think about the AI angle, AI starts with what's the use case? Data cloud, again, another example. Data cloud is, people say data cloud is too expensive. Well, no, it's consumption based. It's like it could cost you zero, but it's about picking the right use case. That use case requires you to understand the domain. Okay, if you understand how hospitals work, you'll work out where AI could be applied where data cloud could be applied. So it's all starting there from that side of things.
Yeah, and I think Salesforce has developed a catalog of use cases for AI, hasn't it? So, I think that's been sourced from, well, quite frankly, surveys out to industry, really, to say, for this particular industry, what do you think the use cases are? For this particular industry, what do you think the use cases are for AI? And actually sort of crowdsourcing that. Now, I would be surprised if there weren't any use cases that came from one industry and there was a parallel or connection drawn to say, actually, that's a really useful use case for this other industry as well, because it ultimately solves a similar problem in a different area. So it's definitely about figuring out, within your industry, what are your transferable skills, or what are your transferable use cases that you can then relate to either another industry or another technology. That's, for example, speaking as somebody who is industry aligned, I'm financial services primarily, but I've had experience in health industries, for example, manufacturing and technology and telco and things like that. So a good example is thinking about an insurance carrier who provides insurance to I don't know, businesses, corporates. Now, the complexity that's involved in configuring a policy and choosing the specific attributes and features and covenants and coverages that a policy needs to have for a business is not too dissimilar to just conceptually choosing a telecommunications contract that needs to have this add-on and that add-on and that add-on. Could you relate the two in terms of abstract principles? CPQ is the technology that could do both. So it's drawing those connections and drawing parallels where you could explain your experience, the value that you provided and contributed to in one role, in one industry, in one technology, and then describing a similar sort of thing in a different industry or a different technology. It's relatable.
I mean, there've been quite a lot of chat. I'm a solo admin. What do I do next? The answer is, okay, first of all, you need to start looking at how if you move role, you're going to be moving roles into where it's teams, because that's where Salesforce is going. I mean, and I'm not sure what the right adjective is. Disappointing probably is the weakest, but disappointing that Salesforce customers don't realize they need to invest in teams to run Salesforce. It's like buying a Ferrari and going, well, we can't afford any fuel, and a mate of mine knows how to do the maintenance. Okay, buy a Honda and spend the money on maintenance and fuel. So we've still got, I think, a battle to try and get people to invest enough in the resource and the tooling to make Salesforce work well. And we're not going to solve this on this call. But I think as individuals who are stuck in solo admin roles, thinking about how they would be part of teams and what role they'd play in that team and build those skills up if they're looking to move role. Because I think that solo admin is going to become a harder and harder role in terms of just the skills that you need until you eventually burn out. So I think being part of a team and working out, are you the dev side of the team, the BA side of the team, the admin part of the team, the architects, and start to chart that career path and build those skills and the connections, mentor connections, or so that you can then transition out as organizations grow, or as your organization grows and suddenly Salesforce becomes owned by IT and they go, right, you're now part of the big team. You can say, this is the role I've got as part of that, as part of the Salesforce piece, rather than going, oh, you're the solo admin, we don't need you because IT does all that. So again, this was called future-proofing your career. I think, again, thinking where you're going to be in 2-3 years' time and where Salesforce is going to be is really important. So I think some of the things you talked about mentoring, about making connections, are really important. So I want to go back to this thing about AI and Agentforce. Is it something that we should all be learning? at least the core principles?
I would say so. Regardless of Salesforce, AI as a as a technology in other technologies as well is increasing. A colleague of mine just posted posted a link to the Age of Intelligence article that was written by Sam Altman from OpenAI. Of course, he's got a bit of a vested interest because it's technology that his business is driven from. But it's a really interesting read to understand where the overall technology industry is likely to go, the impact that it might have on our society, on our culture, and the population, the working population. So yeah, I definitely think that we all need to be understanding AI, regardless of the technology, whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft or Google or whatever. That's first and foremost. Second thing is, should we be understanding Agentforce? I would say make a conscious choice depending on your role and the use cases you see needing to fulfill for your business or for your customer's business, right? Now, is it likely that that's a near-term reality? Is it a medium-term reality, or is it, for your organization, a long-term reality? For you, is it a near-term, reality you want to be part of, or is it something that you're happy to, to sort of develop as and when the opportunity arises, and that might be medium or long-term? So, there's that trade-off between necessity and desire, or need for your own career, that you have to balance as well.
I'm on the far side of that trade-off, where keeping my eyes on AI, but leaning more heavily into more advanced developer tooling, things that make me as a expert even more capable of doing my job better, faster, etc. And then when it comes to Agentforce, I am, and again, this is a trade-off, I am okay being late to the party. I think when I think of Agentforce as a technology and the path to leveraging that technology to drive organizations, the near-term problem that I see, that I want to focus on, that I think is valuable today, that I think is expensive today, is data. It's getting data right, it's making data free, it's making data accessible, etc. And so I think Data Cloud is excellent technology. I don't think it's exclusive technology. So I think if you're a Microsoft shop or an AWS shop, then there's a lot of options for solving the same problem, but that is very much the hot problem. I'm okay being late to the party with AI-enabled agents, and I'm okay being quote unquote dumb when it comes to AI as a skill set, but I am heavy on AI as a tool that I can leverage to do my job better and faster.
We're in a world now where you need to be focused on an area, focused on an industry, focused on a discipline skill set, BA, admin, architect, focused on a cloud. You can't go, I do every cloud. Like, that's clearly not true, because you can't. So, and again, it's interesting. I'll take a different perspective. Running a technology company, as I've run several tech companies, the issue is not one of what can you build. It's stopping people building the other stuff. It's trying to be focused. I mean, that what kills a startup and is because you're trying to focus on too many things. Oh yeah, we could build for that. We could build for this. We could. It's like, no, we are focused on this area. And I think from a career perspective, you need to do the same. Yeah, I know there will be other opportunities and other jobs you can't get, but actually focusing will massively increase the chance of getting the jobs that you want to get you in the direction you want to go. And I think it was said, I think at the very beginning, Sam, pick a direction, and then you can build the building blocks to get there. Find the people who are already there and work out how they got there.
Yeah, and I sort of refer back to that Age of Intelligence, Sam Altman's article, where he says that when we look at what was possible in our older generation's age, they look at ours, what we're achieving now with the technology, and they look at it and go, that is unimaginable, absolutely unimaginable. But you can guarantee that our subsequent generations will be, we'll look at our subsequent generations and the things that they will do with the technology in, I don't know, 5-10 years time will be totally foreign to us as well. So we are in this sort of shift of really accelerating capability. I take your point, Tony, about focusing on what it can do for us right now in terms of productivity and and being efficient. I guess it becomes more valuable when we actually see the value that agents, intelligent agents, or autonomous agents actually start to deliver in cold hard facts. But that doesn't mean that we can't start our journeys now, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
I could talk to the two of you for the rest of the day, but I know you and have got busy lives. The chat and the Q&A have been on fire in terms of people asking questions. Can we try and draw this to a close with, like, what's the one thing you wish you'd known before you started your Salesforce career?
The importance of connections. If I'd have known that back then, I think I would have made a lot of the connections a lot earlier, probably, and I think it would have been quite beneficial. So I would definitely champion the connections with people, with with communities, and things like that.
Couldn't agree more. And connections at every level, deep connections, people that you can come to with the hardest problems, with the most painful problems, and lots of light connections, lots of people who are in your orbit and whose orbit you're in, and you're part of their virtuous cycle, I think is absolutely important. I'm gonna toot my own horn, pat myself on the back, and I think I've navigated the past 5 years well. The driving question, or the driving topic theme for me, call it the next 5 to 10 years, is software engineer. So really it is, I started my career in the Salesforce ecosystem and started my career as a Salesforce developer. I am navigating and orienting my career as a software engineer. I think the world is going to get more complex, more broad, more nuanced, more interconnected. The world meaning our technology world, and the skill set that puts me in the right places doing the right things over time is software engineer.
So I guess my 2 cents were, I joined in 2001, so I guess I should have bought more stock, would be one of the things. But actually, no, I think the one thing is, whilst it feels like we're getting different places, Salesforce has launched, I was around when Chatter launched, when the App Exchange launched, when it feels like it's constant change. You need at times to sit back and go, actually enjoy the journey and not feel like you're on a roll. Some people, the people at the front love the roller coaster. Okay, the people in the middle are scared witless. You need to make sure you're there accepting, okay, I got on this and I understand what it's going to be like, and I'm here to enjoy it, and I'll be around other people who are equally enjoying it, rather than feeling that actually it's completely out of control, because it isn't. You can control your career. And taking some of the advice we've heard over the last hour, I think you can make big strides in terms of managing your career.
That is a fabulous way to wrap up, Ian. I can't believe it's been an hour. I've been sat here with my camera off, just absolutely watching and listening. The conversation, the chat has been on fire for the entire hour. So thank you so much to everyone who dialed in to attend this webinar. And thank you so much to Sam, to Tony, to Ian for some incredible insights and really illuminating chat about AI and the future of Salesforce careers.